Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. And on today's podcast, we are visiting with a friend of ours, Kevin Underwood. It's funny, I met Kevin on social. He's just
he's a social friend.
I've seen him on some forums here and there, and I remember running into him online 6 years ago. Kevin has been an avid backpacker pretty much his whole life. He grew up with his dad, and he has a style of backpacking that's his own. He's spent a lot of time tinkering with gear. He's one of those gear kind of nerds. He likes ultralight. He's been known to go extremely ultralight. But he loves it, and he loves bear hunting and spring bear hunting. And he just got back from a really great, successful spring bear hunt in some rugged country. And I was watching, he got back about the same time we did from our recent bear hunts. And we got to kind of exchange stories. And I'm like, hey, you should come on the podcast. So we got together and just chit-chatted on the podcast about bear hunting, about his bear season, about backpacking gear, kind of what's in his kit right now, what he's liking, what he's using, what he's used in the past. And it's just a fun conversation. Two hunters met online.
Strolling through his Instagram right now. He shot some bears.
Yeah, they did. And he has a great Instagram. I was giving him a little ribbing because I feel like he should put a lot more photos there than he has.
It's you can tell he's into photography.
Mm-hmm. Talks about that, kind of his camera setup. It's pretty simple. Like I said, he likes to go light, but he wants to maximize what he gets out of his gear. And so I enjoyed the conversation. I think you will too. Before we jump into it, I just want to remind you to use the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops to get free shipping. Use the code GRITTY at Seek Outside. Use it at Sissy Sticks for 15% off some sweet trekking poles. And use it GRITTY 2020 at Alpaca Rafts, because right now you save 10%, which could equal $100 or more on your purchase. Mm-hmm. So check that out. Also, use the code GRITTY at Heather's Choice.
Get 15% off your backpacking meals.
Yep, 15% off meals and snacks. So check that out. And with that, let's get into the show. This is Kevin Underwood. Check out his blog, by the way. Kevin has written some articles, reviews. It's just a hobby on the side. And his blog is called
kevinunderwood.blog. And his Instagram is the Kevin Underwood.
Yeah. All right. Enjoy the show. All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. Today, my guest is Kevin Underwood, and we're all going to get to know Kevin today because you and I've met you kind of online, basically through social. I think I had seen some of your posts 5 years ago or so, and 4 years ago, and then I kind of had seen things that you've done, and I know you love getting outdoors and you love backpacking. Time has gone by. We've kind of interacted and struck up a friendship on social, and then recently I saw you have a great bear season. Looks like some success, and I love the photography work that you're doing. So we just got to talk, and I was like, Kevin, I'd like to have you on the show if you're good game, and you're game. So here we are.
Yeah, it's fun. And I mean, not that many guys really get after bear season that hard. So it's kind of fun to talk about when you run into somebody that cares enough to talk about it.
Absolutely. And a lot of guys don't get out and backpack as much. There's some of us nerd out on backpacking. I'm not that technical of a guy, but I'm going to work hard. I'm always, interested in tips and tricks that other guys are employing or their experience with different gear. And so it'll be cool. We'll talk about that. Before we do that, tell me a little bit about your background. And how old are you, dude? You look freaking young.
I turned 30. Let's see.
You're a baby.
I know. Today's the 11th. So like 2 weeks ago. So I'm in Oregon. We talked a little bit. I don't even know if you remember now, like right back when you got started, because I think you were in Oregon City at the time.
Yeah.
And I was in like Southeast Portland then, which I grew up around there. Now I'm out on the coast. So that's a lot nicer.
You were saying seaside.
Yeah. So Portland, you've been back lately or not?
Yeah, a little bit. once a year or so.
I mean, it was busy to start with, but like the traffic and all that's just overtaken the infrastructure. And I work forestry, so I've always been out in the Coast Range anyway. And I got tired across, taking that drive across the west side and like then trying to cross the river downtown and make it back home every night. It's a nightmare. So we just moved out here. It's been almost 3 years now, which seems like 6 months, but it's gone by fast. So
Well, it's such a beautiful place to live. How do you like the coast?
I like it. It's wet, obviously. The winter's a little rain, but Portland's wet too, so it's a lot quieter. It's a little bit busy in August, but I mean, traffic here is like an extra 5 minutes, not like an extra 50.
Right.
So I'm a little bit spoiled with that now, and the whole lifestyle's a lot nicer. It's slower.
And what got you into backpacking? Because you've been backpacking for how long?
Since I was 7 or 8, probably. I guess my dad, more or less, he backpack hunted back in the 70s. We did a few trips before, I was old enough to hunt, I guess, before he turned 12. But then right out of the gate from there on, we essentially backpacked. That's kind of all I knew, I guess, in terms of hunting. Outside of some late blacktail stuff, we day hunted, but everything else was pack-in hunting. And he had one mule we used sometimes, and then sometimes without the mule. But
nice.
I'm definitely not a horseman. I have no animals now. Should probably get some in my future, but
it's so hard, dude, because when you backpack and there's no animals, it is a really refreshing sense of freedom versus animals are great. Once you kill something, you're like, man, it's great to have this animal. But the whole hunt leading up to it, it's just interferes with your peace and solitude.
Yeah. There's they suck. I mean, more or less. And there's always like we didn't do it professionally, obviously. Like, it's not like we have the mules out every week. And so there's always a train wreck going in, like something falls off, one runs. It's always something. And then you got to care for them every day. And I think you guys are probably, and I don't know this, but I get the idea. You might be kind of like me in style and the fact that you guys move camp a lot, I take it.
Yeah, almost every day.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't like to do, but it kind of drives me nuts not to. Like, that's my thing. And when you have animals, it's too much crap to move all the time.
I agree. There's a sense of freedom that comes from no animals. And I like to hunt with my camp on my back. And I've hunted with a lot of backpack hunters who hate that. They want to spike camp and then they want to go out and hunt and chase and stuff and then come back. I'm kind of like a diesel engine. Like, the load, whether it's 30 pounds or 65, like, I move the same speed. And I feel a similar sense of tiredness with it as with I don't have it. What gets me more tired is, let's say we chase elk for 6 miles and I carry a 50-pound pack and then I can just camp right on the elk, or I carry a 20-pound pack all day and I go 6 miles and then I got to hike back 6 miles to my spike camp. My body and my conditioning, my fitness, I'm better carrying the slightly heavier load and just stopping whenever I feel like it or hunting with it. I don't feel phased by it versus, I talked to Corey Jacobson on Elk 101, and Corey's like, carrying a heavy pack crushes him. He'd rather hike 17 miles round trip in one day. I'm like, I'd rather go, 8.5 miles and stop and just carry my stuff. And I like the freedom of being able to have everything there all the time. Like, I don't like it when I get out there and go, oh, dang it, I wish I had this, but I left it at spike camp.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to end up, so it's nice to have everything. But the other thing that gets me too, it's not as bad late season. Like, I was over there kind of across the river from you guys when you did your deer hunt last fall. And like, that time of year, you have so much time in the dark that you can do a lot more moving around, but not sleeping is what crushes me. Like, I can go without food. I survey timber all year. So on average, I hike 50 to 60 miles a week, pretty much all year. So I can do the distance and I feel the weight a little bit because I hike all year without a pack. But having to do 2 or 3 hours after dark, and then you want to get back on the elk, so you do 2 or 3 hours before dark, like, you're trimmed down to 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and I'm not going to not be there at light. That's what you really give up, and that's what kills me.
We're the same. I say this to Ryan a lot. Like, sleep is is everything to me. So as long as I get rest, I can repeat day after day after day, week after week, month after month, intense activity. But once you make me pull an all-nighter,
It's over.
I'm over. Like, I am really messed up for days. I get swollen hands. I get some inflammation. I get tired. Like, the sleep is king. And Ryan will want to pull an all-nighter in the middle of the night and hike all night and then get to camp and then just sleep most of the day. And I'm like, why not just sleep here at night when you're supposed to, and then hike out in the day? So we you got to know you, I think, especially, and the more you get to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, the more you can really capitalize on performing at your highest level.
Yeah, and I quit the all-night drives because of that. Like, they're awesome because in theory you get an extra half a day, but it's not worth it because I'd drive all night or I'd get up at midnight and leave, so it can be, if I'm going to Idaho, say it's 14 hours. If I get up at 3 a.m. and leave, I might actually get to hike in that same night. But then you're crushed for 3 days. So it's like, yeah, you got an extra half a day in, but then you lost Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday because you felt like crap. So
that's I'm the same way. Like, we're really on the same page there. Some guys, I think, they just, like Anthony, my buddy Anthony, even Ryan, it doesn't seem to bother them that much. Their weaknesses lay in other areas. That's not it. For me, sometimes we'll finish a hunt and other guys will drive all night to get home the next morning. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to sleep in my canvas cutter in my truck or something. And then I'm going to leave early in the morning to try to get home. Because what happens when I get home after I pull an all night drive home? I just sleep all day. It's not like I'm hanging out with my family. So I try to sleep when it's sleep time, be awake when it's wake time, and just slow down a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, some guys, like you said, it's other things. It's food or whatever, and those things don't hit me nearly as hard. But yeah, sleep gets me. Yeah,
I was 200 pounds when we went on the hunt, this bear hunt we just did, and came back 188 or something. I lost like 12 pounds.
Yeah, I figure like a pound a day is almost every time.
Yeah, and we also stopped eating a bunch of times because we'd spike out with 5 or 6 days. We still hadn't gotten the bear we wanted, and Ryan's like, we're just going to stay till we get it done. That's how we are. Yeah, we have that ability because it's our work too. That means on day 4, when it looks like it might not happen, we stop eating day 4 evening. We skip a dinner, we skip a lunch, we skip a breakfast because we're trying to spread our food out.
I know the game.
and at 2 pounds a day in food, or 1.5 pounds, it's a lot of weight to bring 10 days of food. So we'll bring 5 or 6 and stretch it to 8, 9 days if we have to. And I'm not really that fazed by starving. I'm not that's not a weakness for me.
It works fine. And the other thing I found, if you take more than like somewhere around like 8 days, like if you take 9 or 10 days worth of food, you'll kill something the first day every time. That always happens.
That's what goes through my mind too. And then you feel it's not cheap.
No.
Your food, you put a lot of time or work or money, and so you're not going to leave it behind. Now you're adding a whole pack of meat and bear, and you got 12, 15 pounds of food with you. Not good.
No. Well, we did it this year. Remington killed his bear first night out. And with everything going on pandemic wise, we only had so much food. Like, it was hard to scrape stuff up to start with that was ideal for backpacking. So we had to pack it all back out. It's like we need it for the rest of the week. So it came back with us, all of it.
So tell me about your kit right now that you're running. What pack, what clothes, kind of what's your setup right now that you're really liking?
So
sleep system?
Packs are all over the board. Let's see. I've been through everything lately, I feel like. So I had a Kafaru for a while. Well, I had a Stone Glacier before that and Mystery Ranch before that, back in the maybe 2010 or even a little bit earlier. But more recently, I was in a couple of Kafarus, ended up with a couple of Mystery Ranch bags for one of their frame. That kind of kicked my butt on this last hunt. So now I got a new Stone Glacier in the garage.
Which
again.
Kafarus did you like?
I like the newest frame. I think it's a Duplex Light. That one fit me really well. The one before that, the Hunter, not so much. I had struggles with that for sure. The Mystery Ranch frame I like a lot until it gets like over 80 pounds. And then I think I have a small waist belt on it, and it still maxes. Like it's stretched over time, and it tends to keep stretching, and then it rubs my lower back because I can't get it tight enough. I think it needs more lumbar. So now I have an X curve, I guess, the 5900 that I'm going to try. Hopefully, I'll probably go back to Idaho like end of this month for another week because I have a second bear tag still. So that'll be that.
I have the Crux frame.
Okay, that's one I used to have.
And I have a really flat back. And Ryan has the X curve on the Stone Glacier. And I was looking at it, and I was messing around with his pack, putting it on. And those curved frames, I sometimes struggle with. And so I need to put some miles on that X curve to really test it. But I'm so happy with the Crux frame and how it fits me. I really haven't put enough miles on the X curve to make any kind of claims about it for myself. But everybody's so unique because you look at that Crux frame, it's just like a board.
Yeah.
But yet for me, it works well, and that's where I struggled. Same thing with my Kafaru packs. They are like I needed the flat back stays because that really fits me well. And when I was using the curve stays, I didn't have. I always struggled with it to be comfortable. So I'm just built different.
And I think we're probably exactly the opposite on that. Every time I go to like a straight type of stay, like that Crux, I had it to cut weight, obviously. I suffer some when it gets heavy. It rubs my lower back because as I pull the load lifter, it wants to pull the waist belt away from my back because the frame's like seed. So you put tension at the top and it just wants to like lift out, which I think is why the Kafaru fit me pretty well.
Yep.
That frame because it's got, and the X curve just from trying it on around the house, that new belt's impressive. New as in newer than I've had since 2014 when I bought my other one. So that frame's sweet.
For me, the curved has the opposite. Whenever I tighten those things, it's always pulling it away from my body.
Yeah.
And making it it's like this battle to try to get it. And every pack generally I have trouble with it sliding down. And I have a big round butt, so I'm kind of surprised when it wants to slip, but it's not about that. I think it's about how your back and spine align and the shape of it. So
I think we have the same problem, but with opposite stay configurations. Like they just don't fit right, and then they move. So packs, one day I'll figure that out after I go through 15 of them.
It's so fun to test, though.
I'm on I don't know, guys complain about buying them, and I'm on number 8. So I've had lots of those. Sleep system, I like down bags. I'm not a synthetic fan for the most part, other than maybe in a jacket. But I have a couple of Feathered Friends bags, like a 0 and a 20.
The cats meow.
Yeah, they're nice. They're not cheap, but they're nice. And I'm a Hilleberg fan. I don't really. Rem has a seek outside with the teepee or with the stove in it, and we used that this spring. But that's not my deal normally, I guess. I think they're comfortable. I don't see where it saves you from anything, I guess. Maybe it could keep you alive if you're going to stay up 24 hours a day and feed it wood, but I like my Hillebergs.
It's so funny because I'm the opposite. I have a couple of Hillebergs and I like them. They're a little on that heavy side and I can't run a stove, and I freaking love the stove.
Yeah.
I will admit that if I don't run a stove like this early spring stuff that we just did on the bear hunt, and it was damp and wet, the ground was just wet and it's vacillating between just the springtime, some fresh rain and then heat, it would sweat quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if you run it without a stove, you're going to get just more moisture inside, where with a Hilleberg, I don't experience the same level of wetness inside.
They collect their fair share still, depending on where you pitch it and all that, but they're not as bad. actually like the first 10 years I started out backpacking, the only thing I used was a bivvy. And so I'm still kind of partial to that because they suck sometimes, but they're so easy to pack up and they're so fast.
Yeah, dude, Kevin, when I follow your stuff, I think I look
And
at what some of the stuff you're using. I'm like, this dude just enjoys a little bit of misery.
I like misery. Yeah. I get a hard time from some people. It's hard to find people to hunt with. But they're just like, you can sleep in such small spots, which in a lot of places is a major problem. That's the same reason I like the Hillebergs, because I have two of the one man models, the Octo and the Solo.
Yeah.
And like the Solo, I haven't had that long. I picked it up for like some November alpine type stuff because it handles snow so well. But otherwise, I like things that are like tight and you can stick in a deer bed or stick on some little perch. Or if you have to, you can actually, kick a shelf out with your boot or an ice axe to dig into because it's small. Yeah. And those teepees, like you got to dig all night to cut a shelf in for one of those.
That's why I really like that Silex that that Seek has right now. My only thing about it is trekking poles. If I do leave my tent set up and go on a chase, I want to bring my poles with me, right? Yeah. So then I got to drop the tent, and I can leave it staked and just pull the poles out, or I'll leave one pole in, and so it's a double-edged sword. Like if I'm going to throw it in my pack and then keep going every day, which is what I do most of the time, no big deal. Yeah. But if I want to pull my poles out and leave my tent there, then it becomes a little bit of a problem. If I'm expecting rain or whatever, it is nice. Although, you can just use it kind of as a tarp and just leave it there. Yeah. But it's tough to say. Like everything has its pro and con.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've geeked out on this stuff for a long time. So, but that's most of the weight that sits in my pack. Like you get through a sleeping bag. I guess I use a Thermarest. I forgot to mention that. But outside of that, like that's most of the weight. And then you get into all the little things, which I've nerded out on for years, but they make much less of a difference in terms of camp, outside of the backpack and sleeping.
I do like to roll over and take a leak in my floorless shelter just without having to climb out of bed. And I swear I got to go at least once in the middle of the night. And so some guys, they never wake up and they never got to take a leak in the night. I've been like that since I was like 8 years old, since I can remember. And that's one of the big things for me with a floorless shelter, especially when it's chilly outside or raining. I like to just take a leak right there, right out of my sleeping bag.
Yeah, and you could do that under a tarp too. I use tarps quite a bit in archery season. Yeah. They don't work as well, obviously, once the snow starts coming because all that spin drift, just like you can't keep it out. It's on everything, and at that point, it's over. So,
what about like the ground cloth? What do you use when you do use a floorless shelter?
I don't know. Well, I do know, but I've gone back and forth. I've tried the Tyvek thing. For me, it's too heavy. I think Tyvek's at that point, you might as well take something with a floor because usually it's 6-8 ounces. I've used plastic like the polycryo type stuff, which is I think essentially window shrink film. You can get that from Gossamer Gear and some of the kind of nerded out backpacking sites, and that's really light. The best thing that's actually for is for cutting meat, because I get those things and they're in like maybe a 2 foot by like 6 foot piece, and I cut them in half. And I think it starts out at like just over an ounce. So then you're down to half an ounce and you have like a 3 foot by 2 foot section of ground cloth essentially that you can stack quarters on.
I've used a space blanket for that.
Yeah. And I've seen some of your pictures too. You guys have bone in your quarters a lot, it looks like, but I never pack bones. Those all come out like on the spot. So I'd like to have something to put down and cut the bones out and get rid of them.
Yeah. I hate how much meat I lose. It depends on how long I'm going to be back there. Like some of those bears we took, we still had another 7-10 days, in front of us. And when I leave the meat on the bone and I get home, I just end up with a lot less waste. So I try to leave it on the bone when I can. I would never do it with elk ever.
Never for sure.
Do it. Even mule deer.
Well, that's why I quit.
All our mule deer.
That's why I quit doing it. I lost a hindquarter on an elk one time, like to bone rot, and it's like that's it. They're they all came out since then. And you guys are kind of stuck back there, for lack of a better term, right? Like via your access method.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which I've done that before too, but the last couple of years we've been hiking them out after a day or two.
Yeah.
So
That's why I prefer, I've been able to, the other thing I did this year that I've always done in the past is, once I've cooled it, it's hard to beat putting it in a super heavy duty, contractor garbage bag and just putting it in the river. The river is ice cold.
Yeah.
It'll keep there forever. And it's so cold that spoilage it's just like impossible for spoilage to set in.
Yeah.
And as long as you get it cooled before you put it in the garbage bag. I had another bear that we got that I hung like I do traditionally. And that meat was hung. It just didn't last as well at all as the meat in the river did.
Yeah.
And guys always want to let it air out and get a crust and let it hang. And I'm like, dude, it's hard to beat putting it in a river, man.
I do it more with elk probably than anything. And so I got contractor bag stashes in certain places that I hunt a lot. But
and when I say contractor bag, I mean these bags are, I don't know how many mils, 50 mils or something.
they're thick. Yeah. They suck to carry, but they
They're hard
work.
to find.
Yeah.
Too. Like people think they got a thick bag, and I'm like, no, it's Home Depot is where I get these.
What
bags.
is the name? There's a place, I can't remember it now, that sells them, and they're like body length. They're like 5 feet tall, and they're meant as like a survival sack, but they're made out of the same stuff. And they're blue, and they're awesome, but they weigh like 6 or 7 ounces a piece. So, but you can put like a whole elk in one. You have to like put it in the creek and then load all your meat in it, because it would rip the bag out, obviously. But I mean, they're hefty, and so those are nice.
It's interesting. Like there's so many strategies, and people have preferences, and it just goes to show there's multiple ways to do it.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say, a couple times when I've done some trips like what you've been doing, and when you're stuck back there and then you hang it, especially if you hang it somewhere like back at kind of a base area and you leave for a week in the spring, if you get rain every day, it's a nightmare, because now you got that thing like hanging in a tree and it's wet and it doesn't crust over, and then it gets warmer again and it's more. Yeah.
It's heat and moisture. It kills.
Yeah.
If you can keep it super cold, but it's still wet, or you can keep it dry, super dry, but it's a little bit warm. It's the combo that'll really make it go downhill fast.
And the easy answer for me is always like, if you hunt by yourself, you have a lot more control over it. 'Cause a lot of times, like the Idaho bear deal is different because you can buy 2 tags, but most other places like here in Oregon or something, even if you're in really deep, it's one and done. So you shoot one and then you just work with it, and it lives with you as you make your way out, and you just deal with it as it goes. But when you add more people or more tags in, it gets complicated.
Yes. But I've found like I've kept meat so long in the backcountry and had it be, and it's always turns out in solid condition. I very rarely, I can't remember the last time I really lost meat. And so people are really afraid about letting it hang a day or 2 days. And it's like, dude, I've left it back there like 12 and it's done.
It can be your best friend during bow season because people worry about it, and there's places they don't go because they worry about keeping the meat. But I don't think it's typically that difficult. Like I lost some meat on the first big bull I killed, and after that, it's been great from there out. So
much of it is timing, because we lost an entire elk once. My cousin Ben shot a bull, and it got dark. It was a blizzard. Snow was dumping. Got dark. Bull died shortly after dark, but we had backed out because, we saw the bull and he was still walking. He had the arrow. It was a perfect shot, double lung, but for some reason it just took some time. Next morning we went back before daylight, and it was covered in like 4 inches of snow. Well, that snow seemed to insulate more than it did anything. It just kept the heat locked in that bull, because we cut it open and it sat in a blizzard overnight, and it was already spoiling where all the bones were. It was rotting. And then we packed out one load. By the time we got back, the meat had already turned green that was left. We got back to the truck, and the stuff we packed out was green. None of it was salvaged. I mean, it had turned at some point or was turning, and this was years and years ago, but it had nothing. I mean, it was freezing cold.
Yeah.
And yet the fact that we didn't cut it open and get it open, it had already spoiled by the time we got to it. And the snow just seemed to actually exacerbate it rather than, because I've killed bulls at night, come back the next morning, found them. They've been dead for 8-9 hours. They were not cut open, and yet all the meat's fine.
Yeah, the one I lost some hindquarter meat on was the same way. Like I killed it at 6:00 or something at night and watched it fall over, and I stayed there and cut it up till midnight. I still got bone rot, and I packed it out the next day. It wasn't that far. It was like a 4-mile pack, and I did that all in one day. And by the time I got back to the truck to like finish that, which was only 24 hours later, he was already getting bone rot like along the femur, and my water froze solid that night. And I slept right next to the kill. I had a bivvy. Like I cut him up, I plopped down, went to sleep, and I still lost some. So that's when I started taking bones out, and I haven't had any problems since then.
Yeah, what we'll do, depending on the temperatures, we'll get the meat, off the animal, hide off as quick as we can, get the quarters, get everything spread out, and we rarely put it in game bags. Actually, we lay it in the wide open air, just on the ground, or we'll hang the leg just real quick and just let it just kind of air out. And then if it's warm and we don't have confidence because you have so much meat on such a thick bone, I'll just go in and I'll cut to the bone and leave it open, but I'll leave the bone there, and that'll let that heat out of the bone and out of it, but I can still leave it on the bone. So we'll do that, especially on hindquarters, and really open it up. And then I hate to put it into anything really until it's cold to the touch.
Yeah,
but
same.
The faster once it's cold to the touch, that's the critical part for me. As soon as you open up the animal and you get it out, the faster it cools.
Yeah.
The more likely that meat's gonna, if you kill it and get it off and it cools instantly, it can last 12 days back there.
Yeah.
You get it off and you trap that heat for 9 hours, you only got a day or two.
Yeah.
Or if that, and you got to get it out. So really is speed of butchering. And
what I do is I'll take that hind leg and I'll cut it down the side that has the socket on it, and peel it all off and leave it in one piece, and then lay it out, and I let it get cool to the touch, and then I roll it back up as like one big roll, and then you don't get the crust on the inside and lose all that like extra surface area on it crusting over.
Right. Yeah.
So then you just like roll it up and hammer it in a game bag, and I pack those. I have those Graxop bags too, which are awesome, and I just hammer them as full as I can get them once it's cooled off.
That's the risk when we're using Graxop, because I love those bags. They're so
awesome.
Killer, but they're not built for taking a bone.
No.
And so it's really easy if you're not careful and you are keeping the bones to put a hole in it. And once there's a hole, but I'm fearless when it comes to just shoving the meat in there and cramming it. Like the bags can handle that. It's the puncture stuff.
Yeah, I like to get it cold, and then once it's cold, pack as much together as you can because it kind of holds that temperature.
Yeah, and if it's cooler outside, I'm more likely to debone.
Yeah,
because it doesn't get the crust. It doesn't. You can kind of save more meat, it seems. But if it's really hot and it feels like there's just so much meat that gets contaminated and that I got to trim and chuck, it's so, I hate, especially on a bear where they're not as big necessarily as an elk. You get home, and I really love bear meat. So when I get home, there's not much. Sometimes you trim it up and you don't get much left. So keeping it on the bones is nice. And then I do like to bone marrow all the bones.
Yeah, that's nice. I miss that sometimes.
It really is nice to have that. And one of my moose I took in BC, we were close to a road, so we packed the whole thing out on quads, kept all those bones, and that stuff made bone marrow for a long time.
Yeah,
those are some serious bones.
Blacktails are good for that too.
Yeah.
There's always roads. Yeah.
So going back to the air mattress deal. We've talked about this a little bit offline. Ryan loves that Bay Agnes, like Q-Core, and but it's not insulated at the level that my Thermarest Neo Air is.
Do you have
And
the
it's
gray one or the yellow one?
the yellow one.
Okay.
And it's a little heavier. It's a little lighter, I should say,
Yeah.
than what Ryan's using. And I like the baffles horizontal instead of.
Yeah, same.
But one of the things that I experienced was I got 3 holes in it this last trip, and it's brand new. I got a hole in my other one. I had 8 years and never got a hole. And then it got a hole. It got a little, it burnt. I got a little spark from the stove onto it, and it burned a little tiny hole in my old one. And, but that old one I've been using forever, and it has been indestructible. And I beat the crap out of it. So I buy a new one. First of all, I buy the one Ryan recommends, the Big Agnes.
Yeah.
It came without a valve, and then finally I got a valve deal, and then I was using it on the snow, and it just wasn't warm. It was just cold. I could feel lots of cold air coming through it, and it seemed to me more of a 2 or 3 season type pad anyway. And like I said, the horizontal baffles just treated me better. Well, 3 holes in my brand new Neo Air. Like,
Are you just using it on the dirt, or? I mean, you're supposed to be able to anyway, but
yeah, like they were the tiniest little. They didn't even look like holes; they were slits.
Okay.
Slits, like almost like the material was just failing under pressure.
That's interesting.
And I've heard only really good things about it. And anyway, it went flat in the middle of the night slowly, and I had to find the hole and patched it. And then another hole 2 days later, and then another hole a day later. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I've had one patch on mine, but it came from, it actually came from the top side. It was like taking naps on it in the middle of the day. And I had like Devil's Club type little thorns apparently around the cuffs of my pants. And those, one of them ended up through the top of the pad because it's not nearly as thick. Mm-hmm. I've had good luck with the Thermarest.
I had 2 holes in the top of the pad, 1 hole in the bottom of the pad. No idea what's making it.
Yeah, the top's definitely more fragile. I had an X-Ped for a long time, and I really liked it. And then I had a tripod at the time with like those metal spike feet. Mm-hmm. And I was picking it up and I dropped it, and like all 3 of them went through the pad, like like top and bottom, like they went through the whole thing, and they're big holes. It's like that one's a gone. Like I can't fix 6 of those. But that pad was pretty good for a while. But the valve on the X-Ped would always leak a little bit. I felt like with my body weight on it at night, it would go flat like once in the night, and I'd blow it back up. And they have like the valve that like pushes in kind of like like a cheap rubber raft or something.
Right.
Whereas the Thermarest has a twist valve. And so I like that idea better, which is where I end up with the Thermarest. And I have the gray one, which I think is the X-Therm.
Yeah.
So that's a 4-season pad. It's like a R5 point something.
It's like $200 too.
It's warm though. It's real warm. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm considering that one. I'm kind of surprised. I've been using the Seek Outside ground cloth.
Yeah.
But Ryan and James were using the same ground cloth. No, James had a Tyvek, but Ryan was using the same ground cloth, and he's never got a hole in his pad. And so
I think it's luck of the draw. I don't know.
I just wondered too if Ryan's Big Agnes pad is thicker, no question.
Yeah.
It's a thicker, heavier duty pad on the outside.
Yeah.
But man, I just never had any problems with the Thermarest, and now I've got 3 holes in 1 7-day window. That something's not right.
Yeah, that's not very good. And I usually like everything they make because that's under the same umbrella as like MSR and Platypus and somebody else. I forget, but they usually make pretty good stuff. But I don't know. There's always a bad one. Like, and I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird. The holes were not like normal type holes, but
I'm
going to mess around. It's funny. Now I'm bringing backup microphones bringing backup pads, like when things go wrong, there's certain things it's nice to have a spare on.
The one thing, I mean, and I have one, I use it sometimes. They're bulky to pack, but you can always get the accordion foldy deal.
I know.
They never fail, and they're actually fairly warm. They're just, you have to pick your spots because they're not that comfortable in that rocky stuff. But if you can get it somewhere soft, they're pretty good.
They are. I used a Z-Lite. Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yeah, I have one of them that's cut down to like 3/4 length, and it
Yeah.
works.
I used one of those for like few years. I prided myself in being able to sleep on anything, anywhere, and
Yeah.
it was. But I got to admit, the pads are so much more comfortable.
They are.
That it's hard to leave that behind. It's so comfy.
But it's reliable.
It's true. I know. I've gotten so good though.
Yeah.
So good at patching holes.
Yeah,
I'm a freaking pro now.
yeah, I'm getting up there too.
Like in the middle of the night, it went flat. I just ran my hand over it,
Yeah.
inch by inch, and then you'll find that hole, and then
Yeah.
you put some tenacious tape on it, and then
Good as new.
back to bed. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'd rather do that than actually. It's so funny because on that mule deer hunt, I couldn't find the hole to save my life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's this hole? But it took me a while of being determined to start figuring out how to find those holes. And now I got better. Once I started to figure out, you can feel there is especially you pump that up tight, you'll feel the hole. You'll feel it. I can't use the front of my hand because it's always too calloused from the cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't feel the wind, but the back of my hand is tender and sensitive enough that I find the hole pretty quick. Just give me a pass on each side of the pad and I'll find it.
Yeah, I use my lips actually. I like rub it around on my face, which works good too. But I tell people say they can't find them. Like, just take it out and don't take another pad with you, because after like 2 days, you'll figure out how to find that thing.
That's what happened.
Like, you give yourself some time. You go out there with it. You'll find it by like night 2 or 3.
I was determined. I was like, this. I ain't sleeping on the ground, boys. I'm gonna fix this son of a gun.
Yeah, just pack it up and go out for the weekend. You'll figure it out.
So ground cloth, that's one thing about it. Like when guys talk about floorless shelters, they often leave out the weight of the ground cloth.
Yeah.
Required. It's like, no. You got to throw that number in there when you're making your evaluations on a floorless versus a floored shelter.
The best one I have, and it actually fits really good inside of my buddy's Seek, is it's the ground sheet for a Hilleberg, like for the little tents, like the Octo or the Enan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just take it off the bottom, which it's not really meant for that. And it probably does weigh 6 ounces or something, but it's heavier because it's meant to protect the tent floor. It's one side's coated in something, and it's probably like, if I take a guess, it's probably like 30 or 40 D nylon. So
Gotcha.
That holds up well. I use that. Like, I went with him, and we're already splitting the shelter, so it's not that bad at that point. Yeah. Like, I had the stove, and he has the medium stove, which is probably only like 1.5 pounds. So that plus the ground sheet, I'm only out 2 pounds.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we did that deal.
What's the what cook stove do you like to bring?
Depends on the time of year, which is kind of the case for everything, which is why I sort of got away from talking about ultralight stuff, because everybody wants to like pin you down in one list and exactly what it weighs. But like, I have a whole garage full of stuff, and it's never always the same. The reactor, I like anytime I'm going to have to melt snow. That thing's a workhorse if you need to create your own water.
Yeah.
Or if I go for a really long time, I sat in the garage a couple times and like penciled out and like measured all the fuel rates with like equal amounts of water. And the reactor pencils out after like 5 or 6 days, because you don't have to take a second can of fuel. So like, it can't quite make it up in just the ounces of fuel consumed, but when you add that second isopro can, then it can take over.
I see.
But if it's like archery season or something, I just take a pocket rocket and like a little titanium. It's like a 550 mil mug basically. And I try and get ones that are flatter and wider instead of, tall and skinny, because your fuel burn rate's way better. Like the heating's a lot more efficient because the water's thinner across like a wider surface area.
Yeah.
And when you crank those things up, like the flames like swing out to the side. So if you can catch all of that heat, you do better on a little bit wider, like shorter one. And those are light. Like that whole thing together is a 5 ounce package.
Yeah.
And the other plus is it only, like, the stove's $35 and the pot is like 25 or 30. So it's not crazy expensive.
Yeah. I ran the pocket rocket for 12 years or something.
Yeah. I'm on my second one. The other one still worked, but the pot stands were kind of jankety after a while, and so I upgraded to the newer, smaller one, and they kind of like reverse fold. But
it's a pretty impressive little setup.
Yeah, it is. That reactor is an absolute machine if you've played with one of those. But
a little bit. It's hard. I like the micro adjustments on that mini mow.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I stopped using a lot of prepared foods where I dumped the heat in the bag with water in the bag, and I started cooking in my actual pot.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't have any affiliations with MSR, probably. So if people are thinking about buying one, don't buy the wind burner, in my opinion, because I have one. If someone wants one, I'll probably send it to them because it's awful.
Really?
I wanted a reactor and they didn't have one like at the local store at the REI when I stopped in Clackamas or whatever years ago. So I was like, I'll pick this up because it's a few bucks cheaper, and like everything about it is cheaper and it works in the summer, I guess. But it's just like to save that like $60, they made like every little thing on the stove like somewhat worse. And like every one of those things is just an annoyance. And so you might as well just buy the real thing. It's only like an ounce heavier. So like the wind burner doesn't have an actual handle. The cozy, like it's made out of this cheesy plastic and it warps. So then it like shakes and it'll like slip off when you get, because the cozy has the handle and it'll like pull off when you go to pick it up. And there's a lot of things. It doesn't have a real lid.
The thing with the pocket rocket is it's just it's on or off. There's no like micro.
Yeah,
what about the reactor? Do you have a pin valve, or is it pretty?
It's a little bit better, but I don't know. They've made it run at such low pressure so that you can. The nice part about the reactor is it can be like 5 below out, and you can set the thing on the snow and stuff it full of snow, and it runs the same, which isn't usually the case, obviously, for a canister. But because of that, when you get it cracked open a little bit, like the way that burner glows and it doesn't have like an open flame, once it heats up, it's kind of all the same temperature.
Right. I'm gonna definitely melting snow was a burden.
Yeah.
Late season mule deer. In the spring didn't matter on this bear hunt because the snow is kind of melty as it is.
Yeah.
But when it was negative 10 degrees,
it's hard.
It used a lot of fuel to try to get water. And we were melting snow on a few occasions, and it was like that was the whole reason to have the stove.
Yeah.
And the mini mow didn't feel as equipped for that as probably the reactor. I'd be interested to test it.
Yeah, if that's like the main goal, that's the stove to have. But it is bigger and bulkier and all that kind of stuff. It's probably like, I want to say it's between 15 and 16 ounces for the one I have, which is the middle size. I went with that one because it nests the 8-ounce can inside. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I go long enough to make that stove worth it, I want the bigger can of fuel anyway. And so it annoys me when you have to nest like the little 4-ounce can in a stove and so then do you put one inside and take a second one and carry 2 cans? Or do you take an 8-ounce can and then not put it in the stove, and the stove like sits there and rattles all day while you walk down the trail, which is annoying too.
Yeah. I would say you not only care about weight, but you also care about bulk.
Yeah, and noise too, because I have it on all the time. So all those things add up.
Have you seen that new Seek outside U-turn stove? Have you looked into that?
I looked at it, but honestly, I encouraged Rem not to buy it. Mm-hmm. And which maybe is a bad idea because I haven't used it, but I had a very bad experience with like the Kafaru cylinder stove because it has the thin wall around the outside as well. Like, you have the thin titanium. Yep. So I encourage them just to buy the box stove. Like I said, I don't have a stove myself. Well, I have a wall tent with the real stove, but that's a whole nother deal.
I would say we're testing it. It's amazing. Like, I'm not sure that.
Well, and that's a better design because it doesn't have the thin metal on the bottom,
and bottom are thick.
Yeah, whereas the Kafaru's the end
and the front,
has
the front with the door is thick. So it doesn't seem like those walls get the heat. I mean, it all gets hot, but based on plus that little thin U-turn piece, like easy to replace. But this is what I think you like about it is Ryan takes the stovepipe which is a lighter material too, and the pipe's a little narrower, which shaved a bunch of weight. And so it's 12 ounces lighter, I believe, than the one that Remington bought.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of weight, right?
It's a ton, yeah.
And so when you take that U-turn piece, you can roll up the U-turn section, which is 3 sides.
Yeah.
And you stuff it in with the stovepipe as well, and it goes inside a little carrier tube.
Yeah.
And then you only have a top and bottom and a door, which is a lot less bulk. And that goes into a little slot. And then all your other pieces, even you pull the little vent, dampening vent. It fishes out of the cylinder, and it slides in there too, because that's a major problem.
Yeah.
It's always getting smashed or bent or jacked up. Well, you pull that little vent out of the dampener, and that dampener is protected as well because it slides into the cylinder tube, the storage tube. So you have your U-turn sides, your stovepipe, and your cylinder all inside the tube. And then you close it. Then you only have your 3 titanium pieces, really, and that's it. Everything else is inside the tube. It's quieter. You don't have to worry about all those pieces getting smashed. The flat titanium is fairly easy just to slip in your bag and not worry about it too much. But the other carrier that I have, because I haven't got my hands on the U-turn yet, I'm getting one here soon. It's this big, bulky, giant thing. The tubes get smashed, and my dampener got smashed, and then it broke. And so on this bear hunt, I couldn't. It was either on or off, and that's what I love about the Seek is it's pretty airtight. And so I can actually run that stove like a true wall tent type stove, and I can draft heat in to light it or get it hotter, and then I can damp it down, and I can adjust temps. With the older styles that I've used, it's like it's either a raging fire or it's off. You control the amount of heat by how you feed the firewood instead of like a better method with airflow.
Yeah, I was impressed because it did work a lot better than I expected it to. It's a lot more airtight than some of the other ones, and I see your point now. Like, I probably shouldn't let Rem listen to this because I might have steered him the wrong way. But yeah, the problem with like the cylinder stoves is you get that thin metal all the way around, and then we're like the guys I knew that have them, we're having to replace the wall of the stove, if you will, like almost every trip. Because they're getting so beat up if you're using them, and if you're not that careful with stuff, which I'm not.
No.
So
no, I've got the same stoves, and a lot of air would just kind of suck in different spots because it's not really precision sealed. And then that cylinder, it's nice and light, but it turns a glowing hot red, and it doesn't last that long before it feels like you burn through it. And this is a totally different animal. It's amazing. I've burned and burned and burned, and my stove is still going strong. So Brian, we'll see how the U-turn piece works, but Kevin over at Seek, he did a lot of testing and before he decided to roll with it, because it was a good idea, but only if it really is. What's cool is if people want to convert, they can save some weight just by buying the U-turn piece.
Yeah.
And so if you did buy
that's a good,
he can just buy that piece. The only thing that you don't save is there's a few more ounces you can you save.
The stovepipe smaller, you said.
Stovepipe is a little smaller.
Gotcha.
So but you're still the bulk of your ounces are still gonna be saved on that U-turn piece.
Right.
And I don't think that little piece is very expensive.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah. So on the hunt, this bear hunt you just finished, you killed a smoker bear. You killed 2 smoker bears. I mean, they look beautiful. Coat's beautiful.
Bears are funny because, they're both nice. Like they're both definitely older boars, which is kind of what we're after anyway. But the one that looks bigger is probably the smaller of 2, like out of the photos. So, which bears are just that way. They're hard to
judge on their feet, but they're really hard to take a photo of because they're just a blob of.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem. Like the one I shot, I don't know. I posted a picture in a story at one point, but he has fat that's like the width of my hand, just over his back hams. Like I did, I think 2 32-ounce mason jars just off that 1/4 rendered fat. So that kind of just sucks up all of the scale and it just goes away. But yeah, you want me to go into that, I guess?
Yeah,
or?
tell me about how that went down and a little bit, because you got 2 bears and this is public land, over the counter.
Yeah, we got lucky. Well, not lucky. I'm the guy that buys my tags every year in January, at least for Idaho, because it opens back up and I spend the money and I get it over with, and then you don't have to think about it. So I had them. Remington wasn't going to go if we drew in Oregon, and somehow we didn't draw. We should have been like 88 to 90% because we had a point, and we didn't draw tags. So I talked him into buying an Idaho tag, and he did that like in late February or something, right after we didn't draw.
So COVID, because I got mine just before they shut it down to non-residents. So,
and luckily I
I'm
didn't
one of the
waste
lucky ones.
all my money because the rumor was, like, I heard from some guys that guide over there that they were going to shut it down the next day, and I almost went online and bought like elk tags and wolf tags and everything all on the same night, but they didn't shut down the fall stuff yet. So, which I do have a deer tag, but other stories. So we went. We didn't go as long as you guys did. We just did like I'm self-employed, but he's not, so his schedule's a little tighter. So we did like the weekend to weekend type deal. So 8 days, I guess, whatever that is.
Yeah,
about 8 days. So we ended up hiking in Saturday. We played the smart game because I like to sleep, and we drove Friday. We took the day off work and drove Friday, slept in the trailhead parking lot. We got there at like 9:30, so it was fine. Slept all night, got up. We left at 9 a.m. and we hiked all day. We went in fairly far, maybe.
This is early too. This is right around opening.
We went. Yeah, I think this unit opened on the 1st, but we were there maybe on the 16th, 17th, something like that. I'm trying to look at my calendar.
April. I mean, that's that's a tougher time of year.
So I kind of had, at least this year, I had a different game plan. I went somewhere that's got a lot of timber, because I think bears do better in the timber.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, where you guys are at, there's some giant old bears, but I don't think the bear density is the same number wise. And so like you guys are playing I think anyway, you're playing the cover ground game and glass a lot, because if you don't see one, there's not there. On the flip side of that, we're hunting stuff that's like 85% cover. Yeah. Probably with little tiny pockets of open stuff, and you just play all the angles and you work every angle. But it's a slower game because you could sit on some of those spots for 3 days and see different bears every day, or some days you don't see any and the next day you see 4 in the same draw. So we played that game, but we went in a double-digit type mileage kind of right out of the gate, and we got in and we set up just in the bottom, because we had the TP and the stove and all that. And I don't like carrying that much gear all over all the time. So we're going to just hunt there as like one draw on the way in. And then we're going to do still like another 5 miles and hunt another drainage. I wanted to hunt further up for most of the week was kind of the game plan. We took everything in, and lo and behold, Remington didn't like my idea of like, there's a drainage and one side's fairly open and one side's like pretty heavy timber on the opposite. So I wanted to go up the timbered side and I wanted to shoot across, and he didn't want to hike up through all the timber and brush. So he wanted to take the right hand side and just try and like look down. And so the bear that he shot, which was the big kind of chocolate colored one, beautiful. I spotted him, like, sure enough, it worked. Like this drainage, I liked it because it was really rocky. It looked like something you'd get blistered up in the summer. I was like, well, if it's this early, that should be one of the earlier things to green, because it was like really hot, arid country. And sure enough, that boar came out on a sow, already like third week, April, just started the 3rd week.
Wow.
And he came out on a sow, and I just like flagged him. I mean, I could have shot him at 500, I guess, which is kind of a little bit further. I wanted to shoot just to do it. And I flagged him down. He shot that bear at 100. Wow. And so that was the first night. So first night, we got, which kind of, it beat us up a little bit because we left the truck, I think, at 8 o'clock that morning, and we hiked till about 3. And then at 3, we set up and went up the hill, and we ended up getting back at midnight. So that was a long day of walking, and we dealt with that. Yeah. So that kind of took the pressure off because I had 2 tags, but he only bought 1. And our goal really was just to shoot 1 apiece. Yeah. If we could find nice boars. And we opted not to shoot the sow. The sow stayed there all night, at least the whole time we were breaking the boar down and everything. And
we plucked Ryan and I. We pulled 9 bears out of on our bear spring hunts, and so far one was a sow, but we thought she was a boar. I mean, she's a giant, and turned out she was really, really old, old, but she was beastly. Sometimes you can't tell, but when we know, because they either have cubs or the way they interact, it's like we try to. Sows are a different thing because they do affect populations dramatically.
Totally.
Just biology,
I'm not a huge fan of shooting them anymore. I did more when I was getting into bear hunting, but I shot enough of them that I don't need to. Like, they're legal, so I don't have anything against it. But you can usually tell for the most part. I feel like based on body shape, which is the big giveaway.
I feel like, with bears, spring, and with so many of them and opportunities so high that if I'm just patient, it's not hard to come across a boar. In fact, we see more boars than we do sows. Yeah,
and I think the other thing too, you get the old textbook thing, you're supposed to look at the size of their ears, and to me that never works. I felt like the first half a dozen to a dozen bears I shot, I was always a little bit surprised, like sometimes in a good way or bad way, at what you end up walking up on after you shoot them. And so maybe, I don't know, several years ago, I kind of just got in the mindset of, I play them based on body shape. I think you can tell the difference between a boar and a sow, unless it's a young boar. But for the most part, based on like the depth of the chest and really the size of the forearms, like the forearms on boars are so much bigger and their whole shape. And then, so I play that game for like sex, and then I try and judge age based on behavior, because young bears walk fast and they do odd things and they're fun to watch. But old bears, whether it's an old sow or an old boar, they move slow, they're methodical. They'll lay down and go to sleep in the open. Like, they just do certain things that young bears don't.
Definitely. They waddle too.
Too.
They just swing their hips. It's a different, their bellies are sometimes seems like they're in the way of their legs a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah, totally. And we were watching a bear that Ryan was looking at taking, beautiful color phase, but that thing's trotting around like it's lean and fit, and it's like
it's 3-4 years old.
Yeah, you can just tell it's probably not that old. The boar that he shot on this video we just produced, it walked with that old waddle and all that, but it wasn't a giant bear. But he was older. He just genetically isn't a giant. And what we found is it's the brighter colored the bear, it seems, the smaller they are as adults.
You're onto it. I get excited when I see dark ones.
Right. And I don't know what it is, but light colored animals, but bears,
they don't get as big. No, I shot one in 2018. That's a cinnamon face bear, and he's not long, but he's big. But they're hard to come by. That's the only color phase I've shot that's real sizable.
Big. We'll find them, but they're not big. The chocolate or darker ones, kind of like the one that Remington took. That one is we'll find big ones like that phase. The orangey red, yellow, blonde. They just seem tiny.
They, for whatever reason, you don't find that many. And Ryan's, even so, is probably, like, if you want to throw that into the blonde category because it's close, like, that's the biggest boar I've probably seen, at least anytime recently, and that's that light. For whatever reason.
Same for us. My buddy Anthony Spencer, his daughter shot a giant blonde bear, just a freak. And the head, the neck is as big as his waist. He got 3 gallons of rendered fat off.
That's
of that
a lot.
Thing. But again, they're out there, but they're not common. Color phase is hard to come by anyway. And then the lighter the color phase, it just seems like you can have an adult boar. But he's not that going to be that big.
Well, and I've hunted northeastern Oregon a lot, and I mean over there, I feel like sometimes it's hard to find a black one. But most places, yeah, the color phase is harder to come by.
The prettiest bear I've ever seen is in the blues.
Yeah. That
like,
area's got so many bears, it's ridiculous.
The
but
color
everybody
was
knows that.
red and blonde. It was like highlights on highlights. And
Yeah.
I was reading about it, and they were saying that bears, lighter colored bears, bleach tremendously in the sun. So they'll come out of their den in their one shade, but as the summer progresses and they spend more time in the sun, they change quite a bit in color.
Yeah. I've also heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that as a rumor that they tend to get darker with age.
That's what I wondered. I'm like, well, Ryan, maybe what we're seeing here is it's not that they don't get as big. Their colors change with age, but
I don't know.
That doesn't account for
that's
the
true.
old boars that are blonde but are small.
I mean, I think, that's true. And there's a lot of sows that are color phased that just never get big. Like I've seen some of those shot that have been over 10 years old by people close to me, I guess. And they'll be like 120, 140 pound bears. And they're just,
weird.
So I guess back to our story. So we shot that one. We got that over, like he was tagged out right away. So he has nothing to do for the week, I guess, other than let me talk him into going miserable places. So we hunted one more day. And then the problem, what I hate about going to Idaho is playing the bear check-in game because you have to do it before you go home. So especially he's on more of a schedule than me. So we're trying to figure that out too. And they're not open on weekends, but he has to work the following Monday. So you get in this whole conundrum of playing time, when you can get a bear checked in and all that. So we hunted one more day. I think we saw 3 or 4 bears. Nothing noteworthy. Just all average size, a sow with a cub, a couple of young boar, maybe bigger sow type bears. And then we decided to pull the bear out. So we spent an entire day doing that, which would have been about Monday or so. And then I had this idea. I had a spot I hunted last year that you can actually kind of like hunt out of the pickup. It's fairly, you still do your work, but you can sleep at the truck at night anyway. Mm-hmm. So we tried that, and the weather kind of came in midweek. And when we got some like rain and mixed snow, and we didn't really see a bear for 2 or 3 days over there. I think we saw 2 sows with cubs tucked way down, like below the cliffs in the rim rock still, basically kind of using their dens. And we didn't see anything else for bears over that way. So then I think it must have been about Thursday, the weather got really bad. And I don't remember how much rain came down, but it was substantial. And we hadn't seen bears in the rain the couple days before. So that's when we finally went in and checked the bear. We got into town and took care of that. And so at that point, I talked him into going back to the wilderness because I was kind of over. I don't really enjoy hunting out of the truck to start with. It gets on my nerves that I'm not trying as hard as I could or something. I'm not sure what the deal is, but something with that wears on me. It's not as much my deal. And so we went back and we packed in. So we like checked the bear in the morning, left town at noon, got to the trailhead at like 3 again, same trailhead we'd been in, hiked till 6. And then I kind of took off for the evening and didn't see anything that night, but I really liked the drainage. And that specifically, we'd run into a couple of guys coming in when we'd been coming out. And a lot of them were headed up just a little bit past where he'd shot his bear because the country starts to open up. And so I felt like there was going to be 3 or 4 camps up there. So I kind of made the decision to just hunt stuff that was even thicker because everybody's walking by it and just like kind of pick through some old burns that are on the south facing slopes and just work it. So that night, it's a pretty big climb, but maybe 2,500 feet. And I kind of ran up there just for the 2 hours and didn't see anything, but I liked how it looked and it was greened up and all that. And so the next day we just made the same play because it's thick and you don't really know what's there. So just repeat, but we got to leave at 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning and spend all day working uphill. And the bear I ended up shooting, we picked him up at like 2 in the afternoon. I want to say he's like 2,500 yards out or something. And he was over a couple of ridges and like not directly connected to the ridge system we were on. And we kind of looked at it, and he's also on a slope that's like, it's probably got like 5% of the slope that's visible. And the other 95% is all mature timber, like just a couple little pockets. And you just see him here, and then later you see him over there. And we kind of talked about, I was like, I don't think that bear's killable right now. Like and we didn't know how big he was. He's too far away to really make a good call on that. And so we spent the rest of the afternoon just we kept working the ridge line, working the ridge system. And at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, we ended up well up higher. And I didn't realize that ridge kind of made us close. And I started ranging. It's like 800 yards across there. And lo and behold, he walks out in like another one of those little pockets. And then we could get a good look at him. I was like, okay, like now, and then I'm hooked at that point. Like that's kind of the addiction of the cat and mouse game for me. So we spent the next hour, we dropped a couple thousand feet of elevation. We played with all the heavy timber, and it took me about 75 minutes probably of doing that until I could line up a little gap here and get him in another little one over there. And by some miracle, there was like one little knob on the side, because it's a bunch of, the country over there. It's a bunch of scattered cliffs. And we got him in a little knob between a set of cliffs, and he came out, and it was fairly quick, but I was able to shoot him head on at like 280 yards and pick him. And luckily, which is, I always want a lighter gun, but there's a case to be made sometimes for Magnum rounds, because when they hit, they anchor stuff. And that was nice to break him down on, because Remington's bear was in an absolute nightmare of a spot to work on. And so at least we had a flat spot once we, kind of got across. And so we dealt with that, and we probably it wasn't that bad actually. We spent 4 or 5 hours getting him back to camp, and then we just packed him out the next day and made it home a day early even. So
nice. I noticed this year, you mentioned the rifle. This is the first time I've tried a 6.5.
Yeah.
And
I'm very interested in that gun.
We both had that, whether it be 6.5 RPM, and I was using the AccuBond 140 grain bullets, and I've always had good success hunting with AccuBond. And so we were able to test it on 4 bears on this trip, and the round is so fast and so flat shooting.
It's like 3,100 feet a second, right?
Yes.
Or something around there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy too. Everything it hit, it just knocks to the ground. Like
AccuBonds are awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
Everything just slammed, and they hit the ground, but then they crawled a little bit, where with my 300 with a Magnum round, it's like it hits them, they hit the ground, and they're done, lights out.
Yeah.
Instantaneous death kind of. But the 6.5 was also on a couple bears. They were just lights out.
Yeah.
But there were a couple where, like Ryan's first bear there, you see in the video, it's dead.
Yeah,
it
for sure.
Needs about 20 seconds. 15 seconds to like stop moving.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a humane kill. It's a very short, quick death.
Yeah.
When you're talking about instantaneous versus 20 seconds, it can seem like eternity.
Yeah. And that one, that round probably has, at least with the 140, as much, because I don't shoot a huge gun. It's a 7 rem mag. It has as much speed, at least, as I can put out in a 140 for the most part on most of the loads I've worked up. But my advantage is being able to go to a 168 or a 175. Remington has a 338 Win Mag, so that's like a whole nother argument. It's not a great flat shooter, but stuff looks like it got electrocuted when it's 200
right.
in. It just...
Well, I will say that the weight of the rifle is undeniably beautiful, because having that rifle weigh 4.9 pounds, and like you said earlier, when we can shave pounds off of what we carry into the backcountry, that's huge. You start adding up how light your stove is, or your tent, or your rifle, or your spotting scope, and your tripod. You start shaving, you're 10, 15 pounds lighter.
Yeah, fast.
And so, man, it matters so much. So if I can have a weapon that weighs just that much still is a good long range weapon. Not that we take any long range shot, but it's nice to have that option, especially if we see a wolf.
Yeah.
We're going to take a shot.
Yeah, for sure.
On bears and the game we're hunting, typically Ryan and I are 300 and in, and I like that. But this gun is capable of whatever you need it to do, and it doesn't have that weight, and it shoots really nice. Like, it's a really accurate rifle.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to test it, but I will say, like, on a couple of cliffs, if I had a 300, it probably would have just stuck the animal right where it was at. But Ryan mentioned this the other day. He's like, but does it really? Because we named a couple of experiences we've had where we double lunged a animal.
Yeah.
It with a 300, and it still did the same thing. It still took 20, 30 seconds, a minute to
go.
So, man, so many variables.
Yeah, and bears are weird too because they can be hard to find. Like when you get one that runs, and so I guess
bleed.
No, they don't. They don't bleed well anyway.
Too much fat or hair, or I don't know.
Yeah, the one I shot last year, it only made it like 40 yards, and it probably took me an hour to find it. And it was right there, and I saw the first 20 yards between where it got hit and when it made it to the timber, and it probably only made another 20 or 25, but it holed up like kind of in between some boulders. And
yep.
But I really like the head-on shot or quartering 2 shot on bears. I try and put it like between the shoulder and the neck if I can get it, and shoot them quartering 2, and just try and hit bone plus everything else if you can get it.
Yeah, I agree. It's an amazing, like,
because they're so tough, but they're soft too at the same time. Like their skin and stuff is soft, so you don't get. It's easy to just through and through one, but at the same time, they got so much willpower to get up and go.
I've seen bears. Every bear I've seen shot with a bow dies way faster than with a gun. It's almost instantaneous. The arrow goes through it, and they run like a few feet and tip over. It's so quick. I don't think they have a lot of lung and heart capacity, and once they hemorrhage there, they fall over. When you shoot bears with a rifle, they just last longer.
Yeah,
they just last longer. Arrows are amazing on a bear. I think they're just so soft, and if you hit them in that boiler room, they're over. Like it's you hear the death moan. It's almost right away. It's like they run a few feet, and then it's like, oh, they're done.
Right. Yeah, I haven't shot a lot of them with bows, but I've seen a couple of them go down pretty fast.
Especially, I'm a big fixed blade broadhead fan, but when you use a mechanical on a bear, they're, like you said, they're so soft.
Yeah.
Easy to
shoot through one. Through. Yeah.
And when you put a hole that's 2.5 inches wide with some cheap expandable, it's like they're dead instantly.
You can put 2 1/4 like through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Without that much trouble.
So funny how different they are from like an elk or a deer.
Yeah. And I think there's a real argument sometimes. I mean, people know it with the bow, like you can use different broadheads, but I think, I don't know, I forget sometimes, like there's a good reason that you can shoot different calibers for different animals as well. Like they have their place, because you can also pick up a 30 cal or 33 cal Magnum and shoot straight through a deer if it's the wrong shot and have them run quite a ways, whereas on an elk, that's ideal. Right. So sometimes it's great to match stuff. And like the 6.5, even the 6.5 Creedmoor seems like the arch nemesis of blacktails around here. Like I've seen guys shooting them at 500-600 yards, and I'm yet to hear of a guy shoot one even at that distance and have them twitch again.
Yeah.
Like the 6.5 Creedmoor and the blacktail, it knocks them over.
Yep, I agree. It's there's a tool for each job. It's pretty cool right now to kind of mess around with all the different tech. I mean, we do really live in a pretty sweet time period for backpacking.
Yeah.
You look at the gear and the loads I carried years ago in some backcountry hunts things are so much lighter now. It's crazy. When I don't have to bring food.
Yeah.
My whole kit is like 30 something pounds or less.
Yeah. Right.
It's unreal.
And we're getting to the point where and we're starting to debate like the little changes, like in the U-turn stove, and that little stuff makes a big difference. But it's come so far just in the last decade.
It really is splitting hairs there, but now it's possible. I remember back in the day to carry the gear that I carry now to have the comfort and whatnot that I have now. If I were to kill a deer and add that to what I was already packing in, it was a 2-trip kind of thing. Now my loads are so light, 25-pound full setup.
Yeah.
Especially when you start where I really struggle nowadays with weight is optics.
Yeah.
Optics and camera gear. That's it. If I didn't have optics or camera gear, dude, ridiculously comfortable level of weight nowadays. And to kill something and throw the whole animal on your back plus your camp and bring it all out in one trip, totally feasible. It wasn't the case 15 years ago.
Well, I'm back to our conversation probably before you started this, but that's another downside of video, which is why I can't get on board with it. It's a ton of fun, but I'm like, maybe someday with the right tag, that's a draw somewhere and not out of a backpack when there's lots of power available. And
oh, dude, I compromise so much on my film.
It's terrible
gear because backpacking is a different animal. You can't bring the same kind of cameras, batteries, and you're. I've had so much practice though. That's where I'm like, dude, I'd love to see other guys go and doing some of the things that we're doing and film it because the kit is totally different. Batteries, I've got it figured out. Okay, this is about how much I can film just from practice. It's like with food, kind of you figure it out just from so much repetition, what works. And so I know on the 6-day leg, I got 3 batteries. And I can film about so many minutes in the morning, afternoon, evening, and then when I get back to the trailhead, when we're all just said and done, I literally have no battery power left. Like I'm eking it out the whole way because it's heavy.
It is. It's very heavy.
So.
It's I mean, it would be a lot of fun to do it, but I'm not. I love to hunt and go all those places, but I do not have a love for video. I like watching them, but
what camera are you taking for photography nowadays?
A 6500.
That's still a sweet camera.
It's sweet, and I mean, it'd be great to have a full frame, but what I do with the photos, there's no need to carry that much extra weight and bulk just to have a few more megapixels.
No, that camera, I mean, you look at, there are dudes using that camera and those photos are going on full spread magazines and billboards. Like it does the job. You
can do it. And especially like I have some decent glass for it. So it pans out, and I struggle even on that side. Like I don't need nearly as much power. But even with how much to take in terms of lenses on that, because that adds up too.
What are your 2 favorite lenses to backpack with?
Right now the 18 to 105 f4, which is like a Sony G series, for that camera. And the one I've taken a lot of photos with actually is the Sigma 16 millimeter 1.4. It's a prime.
Yep.
So I like those too. I have the 50 mil as well, the Sony, just like your standard 50 mil 1.8. Yep. And that one's very light, but it's just not my style as much, I guess, in terms of taking photos.
What was the Sigma?
It's a 16 mil f1.4. So anything I've taken night shot wise is with that lens.
Mm-hmm. Does it fisheye at all?
Not really.
I had to check that one out.
Maybe a tiny bit. It's not terrible. I'm not going to say it's cheap. I want to say it's like $400. Mm-hmm. And that's it's a ASPC lens, so it's built for the crop sensor camera. Yeah. So I don't know what you're shooting on.
No, you're right. That would make sense. I forgot about that.
Which is why it's a little bit cheaper. Mm-hmm. They probably have a 16 mil, but that Sigma glass on the Sonys is actually pretty impressive.
I like it. I have the Batis, the Zeiss Batis, 18 mil, but it's on the full frame.
Yeah.
I think I would like to run a 16 on the crop sensor.
Yeah, which is a really nice length. It's close to like 24 mil full frame, so it's not so wide that it's a good like a walk around lens, I guess, for photos. How's that?
Yep. I have this lens here, and it's 24 to 240.
Okay, yeah, that's a long one.
And what I like about it is, I mean, it's a one lens does it all.
Yeah,
it's not a fast lens though, but with Sony's ISO, you get away with murder on the lighting thing. This lens right here is a nice run and gun lens, especially if you're filming like an elk hunt over shoulder, and I can get the guy close up and the animal far away. when I use clear image zoom and things like that, I
Yeah.
can get a lot out of that. 240 lens becomes a 500 millimeter.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And so it is a great all around one lens, but I do like that bokeh, and it's hard to get with a lens that, I mean, I think it's just doesn't have the look. It's a 3.5.
Yeah. It's a variable probably, right? Yeah.
To 6.3. And so it's like, I just, so I rarely use it anymore because of that. But if I am filming an archery hunt over the shoulder, I'll bring it. I'll bring it often for the run and gun scenes, because it is nice to be able to get in and then also film your buddy right next to you. Yeah.
That's why I like that 18-105. It's an f4, so it's not lightning fast, but you can cheat it a little bit on the Sonys. If I pull it off a RAW in terms of stills, I can use the clear image zoom and get it out to 210 and still take pretty decent photos. It weighs a pound. I mean, it's a sizable lens, but on the ASPC stuff, that's why I like that camera. That lens with the camera and a battery and SD card in it is like 2 pounds and half an ounce.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can charge that camera via USB instead of bringing more batteries if I want. And
I was admiring your photography the other day. People can find your photos on Instagram. Do you have a website?
It's on my Instagram, but just kevinunderwood.blog.
So Instagram is the Kevin Underwood, and it's just like how it's spelled, like how it sounds.
Yeah, someone beat me to my name, so I have the in front of it.
And got some great shots in here, and people should go check that out. And you don't have a ton on here, you know.
I cleared it off actually not that long ago. Well, I had one for a long time, and I got off of social media for like 2 years. And so I started a new account, and then I cleared some of them off because Instagram drives me nuts if you actually use a real camera, because they want to crop everything.
They do.
And so I cleaned a bunch of stuff off, and now I have to cheat with the white border around the photos, but at least it keeps them where I want them cropped. So
I love it. And you got your blog on there, so people can check that out. And your blog's great. You've got the MSR Windburner review. You've got Jetboil Mighty Mo review, Pocket Rocket, backpack. You've got some thoughtful posts in here and some educational stuff. So looks like you're not putting as much time into that as
I don't make any money off of it. It's for fun. So it comes in waves. I mean, there's months that I do more of it, and like I said, I run a forestry business, so that kind of ends up taking precedence. And when I got extra time, stuff pops up on there. But yeah,
well, it's good stuff. People can check it out. Just if they just go to your Instagram, they can find it. But if they're not Instagram user,
kevinunderwood.blog.
Yeah, pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Right on, brother. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
I'll be watching you. Good luck if you get out there again on bears.
Yeah, I'll get out.
I'm going to get out once more.
Yeah. Are you going to Montana?
Yeah, I think so.
With Ryan?
Yeah. I've got, it's an expensive tag. I think I can talk him into giving me my money back because of the COVID thing.
Oh yeah.
But
you have it already.
I already have it, and frankly, I have 2 bears all canned and in the pantry.
Yeah,
and I swear we've already hammered like through half a bear.
So good, so good.
So I'm like, plus Ryan's been smoking whole hams and doing things, and Anthony did too. I want to mess around with trying some other stuff with bear meat rather than just the canning that I did this time.
Yeah.
But I'm such a fan of the canned bear meat and the convenience of it, and just the taste and the flavor, that I didn't want to use any of it for smoking. So if I can go pull in another bear, I'm going to mess around with some fancy cooking stuff.
Yeah. And the whole hams are fun, but it goes so fast when you start,
I know.
You start cooking them. It's awesome for like a week, and then you're out.
Yep. That's what, you just blow through it so quick. But that's why if I've got a couple bears right now canned up, I don't mind, using one like this. So it'll be cool. Well, good luck to you, brother. Thanks for coming on the show, and stay gritty, my friend.